Trapper is probably the most iconic killer in Dead by Daylight. He's been in the game the longest and is very much used as a mascot character of sorts. His mechanic is quite interesting, considering he can completely shut down chases, sometimes before they even start, but only with some proper thinking and a little pinch of luck. In this guide, I'll be running you through the basics of the Trapper, what his playstyle is all about, his 3 teachable perks, how to place traps effectively so they aren't easily seen or disarmed, perk/build recommendations, and how to generally play against him as Survivor. Trapper, as the name implies, has traps. You can place these bear traps in various places across the map, with the idea being that the location is one that a survivor is probably going to run through so that they get trapped. Once trapped, the trapper is notified and shown the location of the trapped survivor. Once the trapper reaches the trapped survivor, he can pick them up out of the trap without even having to chase. If a survivor gets trapped and is far enough away from the trapper that the trapper can't get to them immediately, they can be freed by fellow survivors, or potentially escape the trap themselves. Each escape attempt takes 1.5 seconds and has a 25% escape chance, which can be increased with luck offerings. The trapper starts with 1 trap in his hand at the beginning of the match, and there will be 5 traps scattered around the map by default, all in the unarmed state. With no add-ons, you can only carry 1 trap at a time. It takes 2.5 seconds to set a trap. Stepping your own armed trap will briefly stun you, but the trapper rearms it himself. If you're carrying a survivor and you step into a trap though, you drop them.
Oh my fucking god.
Now, when it comes to placing traps, you have to decide where a survivor is most likely to pass by and least likely to notice the trap. So essentially, don't place your traps in the middle of bumblefuck nowhere, because why would a survivor go there? Survivors can disarm your traps, meaning you've wasted all that time you took to set it, so traps shouldn't be in easily visible spots. So I mean, if you get a map like the game or Larry's, sorry man. In case you weren't aware yet, Dead by Daylight is a game all about time management. The killer wants to be spending time putting pressure on the survivors as much as they can, and all the time that the killer has no pressure on the survivors at all is time for the survivors to do generators. This is where Trapper can struggle a bit, because time setting his traps is time not searching for survivors to chase, leaving all of them free to do the objectives in the meantime. 1 or 2 traps won't make a whole lot of difference, but it adds up. This is why you want the traps you place to pay off, so don't put them in places where they can be easily seen to be disarmed. One of the best places to trap in almost every map in the game is in tall grass. In tall grass, the bear traps are close to invisible, meaning a survivor won't know there's a trap there unless they step in it or walk up to the area incredibly slowly because they think there might be a trap there, or because they saw you set it. One place several new Trapper players will put traps in is underneath pallets. This can be effective against newer survivor players, as they may just run through the pallet without noticing the trap, but this is generally not going to work against knowledgeable DBD players. First of all, anybody who sees it out in the open like that can just run around it, taking getting hit once over getting potentially caught. A smarter player can even throw the pallet over the armed trap, and then slide across it safely. Even if you do catch somebody under a pallet, if there's a smart survivor around, they can use the pallet to stun you and free their survivor friend. A common place to place traps is in front of commonly used windows. Almost every map in the game has a main building that, for some reason, just has to have a window that's way stronger than it should be. As well, the most consistently spawning structure in maps is the Killer Shack. The windows in both of these, and other strong windows, are commonly trapped. When placing a trap in front of a window, you always want to place a trap on the side where the trap will be harder to see, making it impossible for survivors to know there's a trap there unless they guess, or they see you placing it. When playing against the Trapper, survivors will commonly check right in front of these windows for traps. It can still be a good place to trap regardless, but if the trap gets disarmed, you shouldn't do the same thing twice. I've toyed with Trapper players as survivors several times for several generators worth of time, just because I disarmed their traps and they'd come back over and over to reset it and never find me. Don't do this. If somebody disarms a trap, well, maybe you can find them in the area. When resetting the trap, change up the location a bit, considering if it got disarmed in front of a window once before, it probably will be again. Instead, place it en route to the window in a path that survivors will likely take. like in tall grass along the wall towards the window. If you slightly change a trap's location and it gets disarmed again, then somebody can see you placing it. If there's no generators near, it's probably not worth it to waste time looking for somebody who could be anywhere within a line of sight, and it's definitely not worth it to place a trap in the area again, considering you're probably being watched. That's precious time you're giving up looking for people and stopping them from doing generators and getting out. Now, one of the best places to trap as the trapper is on loops. New survivors will typically just hold the W key and chuck every pallet they set their sights on.
You're in my sights!
But survivors who've been playing at least a little while will typically know how to pallet loop once or twice before chucking it, so as to maximize the time that it buys them. When you come up to a pallet and you want to trap it, don't place the trap under the pallet. Rather, place it along the side that will be looped somewhere in the grass, under the assumption that the survivor hugs the wall of the loop to maximize distance. But how do I know which side they'll loop? When there's two walls on both sides of the pallet, smart survivors will always loop around the long side. The long side is pretty safe, while even the smallest misplay on the short side can result in getting easily hit. So there's no reason to take the short side over the long side, unless there's a window around and their strategy has to do with taking the window too. But what if there's two walls of equal size around the pallet? Trap one of them, then as killer, try to zone them to looping the side with your trap on it. Play in a way to pressure them to loop the other side. Either they'll go to the other side, or you'll typically get a hit. Now, some other good places to trap consistently spawning tiles. In the single pallet tile, there's a patch of grass in front of the pallet, just barely big enough for a trap, making it so survivors running at the pallet from any side will get trapped for it. Trapping around the entrance to shack in the tall grass, either around the pallet or around the other entrance, are typically great places to have traps. People looping the shack, or even just entering shack, will typically get caught in these. Placing traps in front of the switch for doors doesn't typically seem like the best play, considering they're in the open and survivors can disarm them. Keep in mind though, the trapper can see his traps across the map, and whether they're armed or disarmed. If you're having trouble finding people after the generators are all done, trap in front of the door switches. If you're paying enough attention, you should be able to notice soon after they're disarmed, signifying there's probably a survivor there opening the door. Stairs is another place that typically seems like it wouldn't work that much, but keep in mind survivors going up or down stairs are probably looking more ahead than at the slope in front of them, so it has the potential to catch people off guard and be like, oh wait, there's a trap there? Around corners is another good place to put traps to catch survivors off guard, though it really depends on the survivor player whether it will work out or not. As well, you could potentially trap loops during a chase, if the loop seems quite strong. Alright, let's cover the 3 Trapper Teachable perks. His level 30 Teachable is Unnerving Presence. This perk makes survivors within your terror radius have a 10% greater chance of skill checks, with the success zones being reduced by 60%. It's a pretty meh perk, since most survivors will just hit the skill checks anyway. Definitely works better with the perk Distressing, which increases the terror radius, and has the potential to work well on the Doctor, since survivors should slowly go crazy within his terror radius, making Distressing really good, and skill checks are already hard to hit once your survivor starts going crazy, making Unnerving Presence good. His level 35 Teachable perk is Brutal Strength, which is definitely the best out of the 3. It increases the speed of breaking pallets and kicking generators by 20%. Less time spent on that means more time chasing survivors. Being able to break pallets faster has the potential to net you hits on survivors you're chasing with the time saved. His level 40 Teachable is Agitation. This perk increases your speed by 18% and terror radius by 12 meters while you're carrying a survivor. For some reason, back in the early days of DBD, everyone used to run either Agitation or Iron Grasp. Literally every killer was so afraid of the survivor wiggling free, but nowadays the hook spawns are a lot better, so you should be able to make it to a hook without either of these perks help you make it there. I mean, there wasn't much chance of survivors wiggling out back then either without the hooks being sabotaged, but everyone was super afraid of it for some reason. Agitation and Iron Grasp. The latter increases wiggle time. Both can help you if you're trying to get farther than you normally could, helping you get to areas like basement or to a certain hook if you want to keep survivors within a certain area or away from the doors. If you had to take one of the two, Agitation is superior. Increasing your speed while carrying somebody means you get to the hook faster and get back to searching for other survivors faster, so the perk will slightly increase your efficiency. I don't personally feel like Trapper is worth leveling just to get his 3 perks on other killers. None of them are exceptional, but Brutal Strength isn't awful. Now, as for my perk/build recommendations. If you'd like details on what perks I talk about actually do, I'll link my important perks video in the description. The only perks that I feel work better on Trapper than other killers are potentially hex perks. Most killers have no way to defend their totems from being destroyed. Trapper has traps though, potentially catching any survivors who aren't paying attention, or at least letting you know when the trap has been disarmed and someone's probably on the totem. So perks like Hex Ruin or other hex perks are slightly stronger on him than other killers. I recommend Whispers on literally every killer, as it's the best tracking perk in the game. Barbecue and Chili is always a solid choice on any killer to gain more points and start more chases after hooking somebody. Enduring is an incredible addition to any killer who has to deal with pallets, so no reason not to have it on Trapper. Spirit Fury as well helps any killer that deals with pallets. My personal build I use on Trapper is Whispers, Barbecue and Chili, Hex Ruin, and Enduring. The most important perks of that build I feel are Whispers and Enduring. There's no reason not to be using those perks, but feel free to swap stuff in for the other slots. Or swap stuff in for any of the slots, you don't have to listen to me, but that's what I personally go for. I feel it's the most effective 4 perks I can be running. Finally, let's wrap up with how to play against the Trapper as Survivor. First things first, be wary of tall grass. Right when you think the Trapper player wouldn't be crazy enough to put a random trap there, surprise! If you're not in a chase, may as well just avoid tall grass when you can. After all, that's where wild Pokemon come from. Keep an eye out for traps. If you see one, disarm it before it can cause you or your teammates trouble. If you're by a strong window, it may be a good idea to check it for traps to see if the Trapper placed one there. Walk up to it very slowly, constantly stopping and starting so that you can get the disarm trap prompt if it turns out that there is a trap there. If you see a trap under a pallet, either go somewhere else or chuck the pallet without going to the other side and then vault the thrown pallet. Try to keep your eyes on the Trapper whenever you can. If you see him place a trap, you can disarm it when you get the chance. If the Trapper starts placing a trap during a chase, you better skedaddle to the next tile. That's your chance to make some distance, and the tile you're on won't be safe anymore once the trap is set. That's pretty much it for the basics of how to play him and play against him. All in all, Trapper isn't a terrible killer. He has potential, the potential to snowball, catching more and more survivors in traps and snowballing towards victory. However, you need to be aware of how much time you're spending placing traps, since the survivors are doing generators during that time, and if nobody ever steps in your traps or they're all disarmed, all that potential to snowball is nothing for the round. Don't expect consistent games with the Trapper. Games will be all over the place in terms of how many people you catch in your traps. I'm gonna try to zone her towards it. Wow. Does she not know how to play a long wall jungle gym? Are you kidding me? Oh, come on! Go towards the window! This is what happens, man! You put down your trap strategically as Trapper, and then the survivors don't know how to play the game. This is what happens, unless they saw me place it earlier, and that was actually a big brain play. That's way above my head. Regardless, I hope this guide has helped you with making that trap placement just that much better. Better enough to catch more survivors. In the Advanced Trapper Guide, we'll be covering the most lethal spots in the game to place traps, some of which are impossible to disarm, and others which make escape for the survivors impossible, while also touching on some unique Trapper mind games. For that video, or any of my other guides, links in the description below. If you have any questions, feel free to stop by my Twitch or leave a comment down below. I hope I've been able to help, and until next time, I'll see you in the fog. Take this window, maybe? Please take this window. Please do. You're gonna go through that window there. Take the window, Claudia! Are you kidding me right now?